Welcome to Drive the Daf. Clear, structured explanation of the daily daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Yoma Daf Yud Zayin is a short daf with two sugyas. First, the Gemara is trying to find a resolution for a contradiction between two Mishnayos describing the layout of the offices in the Beis HaMikdash. The Gemara will resolve the contradiction, make an assumption about its resolution, and then prove it based on a different contradiction. And then the Gemara will go into the sugya of the Kohen HaGadol, who has the right to take any portion or bring any carbon that he wants, and the Gemara will discuss how the Kohen HaGadol got a share of the breads that were brought with karbanos. The Gemara will quote a brisa, and the Gemara will try to figure out who one clause of the brisa must be reflecting the opinion of. So first of all, we have a contradiction as to what the layout of the offices around the Beis HaMoked was. The Beis HaMoked was a large central structure in which Kohanim would stay when they were there overnight. There were 4 offices surrounding it, and we have 2 brises. One brisa lists where each of the 4 offices exactly were, and the 2 which we need to discuss are one that it lists in the southwest corner, and that is the Lishkas HaTalaim, where sheep that were checked for a mum were kept in advance of being used as a carbon talmid. And that directly contradicts a different brisa that specifically lists that exact Lishka was in the northwest corner. So the first brisa says it's in the southwest corner, second brisa says it's in the northwest corner. Now, the first brisa does not say where the other 3 offices were, just lists the other 3 off, and one of them, the last one on the list, the 4th one, is the office where the lechem hapanim was made. Now, the second brisa does specifically say where the lechem hapanim was made, where that office is, and it pegs it as being in the southeast corner. So first of all, we have to deal with the contradiction of where was the correct location of the Lishkas HaTalayim, the office of the lamps. So the Gemara says, well, one Mishnah says that it was in the southwest, and the other says it was in the northwest. The truth is that it was just in the west. It was neither in the southwest nor the northwest. It was a very long lishka. It stretched along most of the western wall, and it did not reach the northern corner or the southern corner. Therefore, depending on where you're coming from, as you're approaching the lishka, you may see it as being in the northeast corner or being in the southeast corner. If you're coming from the south, you're walking along the south wall, you see that this lishka doesn't meet the south wall along which you're walking. So you say, oh, that must be in the northeast corner, in the northwest corner. If you, however, you're coming from the north, from the northeast, and you're approaching the northwest corner, you'll see that the lishka doesn't meet the north wall. So you say, oh, this lishka must be in the southwest corner. And therefore, it can be referred to by one Mishnah as in the southwest corner, and in one Mishnah as the northwest corner. Now, the Gemara says it's logical that it was closer to the southwest corner, and therefore when you're going to calculate where it is, it makes sense that you're referring to it being in the southwest corner usually. Why? Why do you see that? So the Gemara says, because let's deal with the other contradiction as to where the Lechem HaPanim office was. One brisa says clearly that it was in the southeast corner. The other brisa just lists it off and doesn't say where it is, but it lists it last. Now, if you want to tell me that the Lishkas HaTalayim, which is the one that it mentions first, it says that the Lishkas HaTalayim was there, and then it doesn't say specifically where the other 3 was. It starts with Lishkas HaTalayim, it says where that was, and then it lists the other 3, ending off with the Lishkas Lechem HaPanim. So if you want to say that it was really in the southwest corner, so then I could understand how it fits with the other brisa. It's closer to the southwest corner, and the other brisa says that the office of the Lechem HaPanim was in the southeast corner. So this brisa is listing the one that listed without specifying where, is listing it off in order, starting from the Lishkas HaTalayim, and moving clockwise around the Lishka. So it starts in the southwest corner, and then the next 3 that it says are northwest, northeast, and then southwest, going in clockwise order around the Lishkas, and that's why it ends off with the Lishkas Lechem HaPanim. However, if you tell me it was really primarily closer to the northeast corner, then whichever way you're going, whether you're listing them off in clockwise order or counterclockwise order, the Lishkas Lechem HaPanim should be the second Lishka on the list. Because if you're starting in the northwest, when you will no matter whether you're listing them clockwise or counterclockwise, you're going to get to the southeast corner second. You'll either do first northeast and then southeast, or you'll do first southwest and then southeast. Either way, you won't get to the southeast corner third. So it's got to be that it was in the northeast, it was in the northwest corner, it was closer to the northwest corner, it was closer to the southwest corner, and therefore when we were listing it off, it ended up third because we were counting the order clockwise. Now, the Gemara right away has a kasha. The Gemara says that can't be. Because we never move clockwise. Whenever you're traveling in the Mishkan, you always have to, or in the Beis Mikdash, you always have to make all your turns to the right, which means you're always going to be going counterclockwise. You'll start your turn moving to the right of the Mizbeach. When you step onto the Mizbeach, you'll turn to the right, which means that as you keep traveling around the Mizbeach or around any of the Lishkais or around anything, when you're moving around a square or a circle, if you enter it and turn right, you'll keep traveling in a counterclockwise order. So what does it make sense? So the Gemara says that's not a kasha. That's when you're actually walking around. Here we're just listing it off. You can list it off in any order you want. The Gemara now refers back to the Mishnah where we had seen that the Kohen Gadol has a right to bring any carbon he wants always, and he has a right to take any portion he wants always. So the Gemara quotes a brisa which spells out how it works. So the brisa says that the Kohen Gadol has a right to say, I want to be makriv this ola, I want to be makriv this carbon mincha. Now, as far as taking any portion, he could say, I want to eat from this chatos, I want to eat from this carbon asham. He could, those are the two karbanos that had parts that were eaten by Kohanim. So he could say, I want to take whichever piece I want. Now, what about the breads? So there were two types of breads that were divided amongst Kohanim. One was the shtei alechem, 2 loaves of bread that were brought on Shavuos. And the other is the lechem apanim. Those were 12 loaves of bread, which were divided every Friday. So Gemara says, continuing to quote the brisa, that the brisa has 3 clauses. The first 2 aren't specified, and the last one is clearly Rebbe. And the question is, who are the first 2? In order to understand them, we have to be aware of the machlokas Rebbe and the Chachamim as to how the Kohen Gadol splits with the other Kohanim. According to Rebbe, the Kohen Gadol takes half. How do you know he takes half? Because the pasuk says v'haisel Aaron u'Levanim, which would be for Aaron and his sons. So you see, it was an equal split between Aaron and the sons. So Aaron takes half. The Chachamim say no. Aaron took slightly less than half. He didn't take a full half. He took less than half. It's not split evenly. He gets a larger portion, but it has to be less than half. So now let's see what the 3 clauses of the brisa are and how they fit. So as far as the lechem apanim, so it says the Kohen Gadol takes one of the 2. So that sounds like Rebbe, he takes half. Second clause, so here, the second clause without a name says that as far as the lechem apanim is concerned, he takes 4 or 5. Now, 4 or 5 is less than half. 4 or 5, the Gemara will explain why 4 sometimes and why 5 sometimes, but either way, it's less than half. Now, then the third clause is Rebbe. Rebbe says it's always 5. 2 of them you don't split. You're really only splitting 10. The Gemara will explain why. And therefore, you take half of the 10, so he takes 5. So now the Gemara says, I don't understand this. The first clause definitely sounded like Rebbe. The last clause, it says explicitly is Rebbe, but the middle clause sounds like the Rabbanan. And why sometimes 4, sometimes 5? So what's going on here? So the Gemara brings 2 ways of explaining it, Abaye and Rava. Abaye says it's all really the Rabbanan. The first clause is the Rabbanan, the second clause is the Rabbanan. Third one is Rebbe saying he argues, and that's why it explicitly says Rebbe argues. How is the first clause the Rabbanan? Why does he take one of the shtei halechem, which is half, if it's the Rabbanan who hold that he's supposed to get less than half? So Abaye says, because you're not going to give him a broken piece. He's supposed to get less than half, slightly less than half, but there's only 2, so you have to divide it. You're not going to break off a piece, and therefore he ends up with a whole loaf, and therefore it's exactly half. That's the Rabbanan agreed to. Now, the second clause where it says 4 or 5, that's the Rabbanan explicitly. That's slightly less than half, and the explanation for why sometimes 4, sometimes 5 is that it's not sometimes. It's a machlokas. There's a different machlokas between the Rabbanan and Rabbi Yehuda. How you divide the lechem apanim. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you have an equal split. You split it 6 and 6. You divide all 12 into two halves. What are the two halves? Not the Kohen Gadol and the other Kohanim. The two halves are the two mishmaros. On Friday there was a change of shift of which Kohanim worked in the Beis HaMikdash. The incoming shift took half and got 6, and the outcoming shift took half, and therefore they also got 6 of them. Now, that's how it worked if the Kohen Agadol himself didn't want any. If the Kohen Agadol said that he wants, he comes and he gets half of all of them, so he gets 6, and that leaves only, he gets a share, and that leaves only the rest of them for the other Kohanim to divide amongst themselves. Now, the opinion of the Rabbanon say that he never gets half, he always gets slightly less than half. So since 12 are being divided, slightly less than half would be 5, and that's why he gets 5. So that fits according to the Rabbanon who say he gets less than half. That's the Rabbanon arguing on Rebbe. And the Rabbanon arguing on Rabbi Yehuda who say that the split is all 12. Now, Rabbi Yehuda himself disagrees, and Rabbi Yehuda says 2 of the 12 are set aside as a reward, as a payment for the Kohanim who are going to work in the next week, as a schar for them closing and opening the doors and the gates. So 2 are not divided. 2 go to those Kohanim. They're not up for grabs. It only leaves 10 to be divided. 5 go to the incoming shift. 5 go to the outgoing shift. So that comes out that the incoming shift really gets a total of 7. But you're only dividing 10. If the Kohen Gadol says he wants some, he has to get slightly less than half. So less than half of 10 would be 4. Half of 10 is 5, less than half of 10 is 4, and that's why he takes sometimes 4, sometimes 5. According to Rabbi Yehuda, he takes 4, and according to the Rabbanon, he takes 5. That's how Abaye understands its entire Mishnah, and it comes out the first clause and the second clause are really the Rabbanon. So now, Rava disagrees. Rava says, no, the entire Mishnah is all Rebbe. The first clause is Rebbe because it says he gets one of the 2, that's half. The last clause is Rebbe, that says so explicitly. The middle clause, why is it Rebbe, and why is it sometimes 4 and sometimes 5? So the Gemara says it's... Rava says it's Rebbe because he's holding like Rabbi Yehuda. You're only splitting 10. 2 go to the Kohanim for opening and closing the doors. You're splitting 10. If the Kohen Gadol says he wants, he gets half the 10, he gets 5. Why is it sometimes 4? Because sometimes you're only splitting 8, and he's getting half again. Why would you only split 8? Sometimes there's an extra shift of Kohanim. If Yom Tov fell out in the middle of the week, and all the Kohanim came for Yom Tov, some of them might decide to come early for Shabbos or stay late for Shabbos. So on that Friday, you may have an extra shift of Kohanim there, and therefore you would take 2 of the loaves of the Lechem Apanim and divide it up amongst whatever extra Kohanim there were there. And therefore the 2 regularly scheduled shifts would only have 8 to split. So they would have 8 to split. If the Kohen Gadol didn't want anything, they each got 4. If the Kohen Gadol says he wants a piece, a share, he gets exactly half there, and therefore he gets 4, and that leaves only 2 left for the other Kohen to split. But that explains why sometimes the Kohen Gadol gets 4, and sometimes the Kohen Gadol gets 5. The Gemara says it's a very nice pshat. The problem with it is that you can't tell me that the first clause is Rebbe, the second clause is Rebbe, and then in the third clause it says Rebbe Omer. Rebbe says, very funny, it was Rebbe all along. Why does it say Rebbe Omer if he's the one who's speaking the entire time? The Gemara agrees, Kasha, that is Taka, that is...
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.